Tonight is Monday, April 7th, 2014. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Elmhurst City Council. I would ask that you all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Spencer, could you please call the roll?
Gudenkauf.
Here.
Deuter.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Leader.
Here.
Polumsky.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Pipskin.
Here.
York.
Here.
Levin.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
Honquist. Absent. Kennedy.
Here.
Mulliner.
Here.
Wagner. Absent. 12 present, 2 absent.
12 present, 2 absent. We have a quorum. On to agenda item number 3.1, written receipt of written communications from the public. Is there anybody in the audience at this time who has, please wait until I'm finished. Is there anybody in the audience at this time who has anything that they would like to submit to the clerk? Please raise your hand. All right, we'll go one at a time, please. Please come up here, and Mr. Crumry, did I get that correct? Please deliver your correspondence or what you have to Clerk Spencer. She'll make sure it gets distributed. And you, sir, as well? Nothing. Mr. Quigley, you have something you'd like to hand in?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, Clerk Spencer.
Thank you for acknowledging me. Today, my office received from Pamela Uslander, 102 East Crest Avenue, Bensonville, a list of names and comments from a website called change.org. And since I received them today, we already made copies for everyone on the dais. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Clerk Spencer. Anyone else with any written communications to be submitted? Seeing none, we'll go on to agenda item number 4. That's the public forum portion of our meeting. This is an opportunity for anybody in the audience to address the council, specifically the chair of this meeting, on any subject which you deem. We ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes out of respect for other folks who might want to talk and out of respect for the business that we have to conduct this evening. The 3 minutes is not transferable. If you go over your 3 minutes, I'll give you a gentle reminder and ask you to wrap up. At this time, Clerk Spencer, do we have anybody signed up for public forum?
Yes, we do. We'll start with Bill Weiss, 712 Prospect.
I ask you to approach the microphone here on the right and state your name and address, and your time begins after that. Thank you very much.
My name is Bill Weiss. I live 712 Prospect in Kirkland, Illinois. I'm not from here, but the hot dog lady of Elmhurst has brought me here. Since learning that she was downtown, I've come here quite often for the hot dogs and to do some shopping. I want you to think about that name a little bit while we talk here tonight, the hot dog lady of Elmhurst. It's a name that represents a single mom who built her small dream from nothing, a woman who spent years planning the right business and chose just the right town, a woman who is proud not to take the easy way out and take a 9-to-5 job working for someone else. She started her own business, work endless hours to provide for her child and teach her child how to achieve dreams. She may not be brick and mortar. She may not have deep pockets, but her business is built on dedication, commitment, and character. She is in there, in person, every day, owner, neighbor, and friend, making people laugh, joking with them, sharing their lives, smiling together, helping them to remember street vendors from back when they were kids. And she serves one heck of a hot dog. But some have called her a nuisance, an obstruction, a danger. They consider her less worthy of support than any other business because her business rests on wheels instead of concrete. The hot dog lady of Elmhurst has become part of the soul of downtown Elmhurst, a touch of specialness that makes this place different than any other business district that's lined with cookie-cutter storefronts. The hot dog lady makes coming here special, a kind of event. Speaking for myself, I and the friends and family that I brought here, just because the hot dog lady is here, have made purchases here. I bought from Plaza Appliances when they were still here. I frequented the hobby shop. I've gotten frozen yogurt and even seen a couple of movies. It's because she is here that I made these purchases, and my friends have made these purchases. The hot dog lady of Elmhurst, she's part of this town, a small part maybe, but a part. Disallow or make it impossible for her to do business here, and Elmhurst will lose part of its soul. A small part perhaps, but no less tragic than a vacant storefront. Say that name again, the hot dog lady of Elmhurst. She dedicated part of her business name to this town. This town owes her no less dedication. Help the hot dog lady of Elmhurst. Keep Elmhurst and her visitors smiling. Thank you.
Pamela Uslander, 102 East Crest Avenue, Bensonville.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Pamela Uslander. I am known as the Hot Dog Lady of Elmhurst.
Could you state your address, please?
I'm sorry?
Could you state your address, please?
102 East Crest Avenue, Bensonville,
Thank you.
Illinois. The council, you've all received a copy of a petition that I started on March 27th, 2014. That petition contains over 200 comments and over 1,020 signatures of people who support me. My petition states, no relocation from original site which has been held for 23 years at Schiller in York. No increase in my license fees. Reasons being, number one, visibility will be lessened west from Addison Street, east from Schiller, north and south on York Road, in which case making visibility to the cart will in long term cause hardship to my business. Two, relocation was based on deeming my business and the area a safety hazard, which is based on a possible, not yet determined, 6-story garage on Addison Street, which is approximately 1.5 to 2 blocks away from my said location. Number three, City Center representative titled my business uncomplimentary in the current location, but finds it complimentary on the east side of York Road. Number four, said my business does not want to be labeled negativity, I can't speak, in a negative sense, how's that, as an unsafe or hazard-like business. I've never been cited, ticketed, or fined for any reason. Number five, if the council agrees to a 2014 relocation, this will be opening up a door to future relocations in the future and could not be based once again on assumptions, possibilities, and the development in the city of Elmhurst. Not to mention relocation on the east side of York Road, I believe will cause new grievances that might arise from some of the brick and mortar businesses, especially the restaurants. I am willing to temporarily move if for any reason there was construction adjacent to my location, but I don't believe I should be moved permanently for a temporary situation. I also believe that there could be 3 reasons possibly for all of this to have come about and have brought me here before you right now. I believe one of the reasons could be the building adjacent to my location, which is now Plas, will either have major construction or demolition in the future, or possibly a 6-story parking garage on Addison Street, which is 2 blocks from named location at York and Schiller, or from a local business, New Crepes, who wants to access my location for sidewalk signage, which is by your own city ordinance illegal. All of these possible reasons for my relocation are based on greed, manipulation, assumptions, possibilities, unwarranted accusations, and absolutely hold no solid ground for relocation. Thank you for your time.
Mark Dufenagel?
Could you, we record, so can you please step to the microphone?
I was going to ask if Barb Lonergan from our group would be able to speak first.
Sure. Is she-
That's fine. She's fifth on the list, but that's fine. We'll put, you want
Thank
to be
you.
fifth?
We'll swap spots there.
Barbara Lonergan, 261 West Fremont Avenue. On behalf of Elmhurst Cool Cities Coalition, we'd like to communicate our support of renewable energy as the city negotiates a new electricity aggregation contract. We commend the city for the purchase of 50% renewable energy credits, or RECs, in the 2012 contract. We can continue to clean our energy mix in a number of ways. A few of those include reducing our use of dirty coal, continuing to purchase RECs, and/or adding wind to the mix. Our Cool Cities members, some of who are in attendance tonight, representing Cool Citizens and also organizations such as the Garden Club and the League of Women Voters, also encourage the purchase of renewable energy in the contract. Additionally, we have more than 150 residents who participated in a 2-week I Heart Clean Energy campaign. Some of those individuals included in the campaign are Cool Cities members, but most are not. They are residents interested in a cleaner energy future. The campaign has been included in your meeting packets, and we encourage you to take a moment to review those photos. We're in support of renewable energy, which in turn creates jobs, cleans the air of pollution, reduces incidence of asthma, reduces carbon emissions, offers price stability, and promotes economic development. We thank you for your consideration.
Next, Glenn Miller. I believe it's 872 Stratford.
Yeah, my name is Pastor Glenn Miller. I've been in Elmhurst since 1998.
Can you please state your address, please?
872 Stratford,
Thank you.
Elmhurst, Illinois. I'm here to support Pam. We've been in the neighborhood for a long time. Every year, our family goes downtown and enjoying Elmhurst downtown facility. It's almost like the old Wrigley Field when those hot dogs that she makes. It just makes us feel warm, and then we can just circle around the neighborhood and downtown. It's an enjoyable time. I think what Pam offers is a touch of class, and not only a touch of class, but she offers to a lot of us in the neighborhood friendship, fellowship is where you can talk and just really support her. She'll talk to anybody. You know, as ugly as I am, she talks to me. So it's just nice to have her in the neighborhood. To switch her, to shift her, is like moving something that is an archive or something that's been placed in the area to help us. So I'm here to support her, and I would support her staying right where she is, serving those good old hot dogs of Elmhurst.
Right, we got Glenn, that was 4. All right, now, Mark, are you ready to speak?
I'm Mark Steftenagel, 182 Olive, Elmhurst. And first of all, I want to thank the council for voting for aggregation and renewable energy a couple of years ago. And I urge you to vote for renewables again. I really look at it as a value to our community. If we have to pay $10 to $20 more per year as a resident, I think this community can afford that. It's an investment, I believe, in our future and our children's future. Last Monday, a week ago, the United Nations released its IPCC study on climate change. And if you read that, you will be glad you voted for renewable energies. Thank you.
Next, we have James Colbert, 234 North Willow Road.
Hello, James Colbert, 234 North Willow Road. I stand in support of a referendum in November to allow the voters to decide whether or not the taxpayers should be paying for a six-story car garage on Addison. I know we generally have a representative form of government, but from time to time, statewide and locally, we go to the electorate to see if they can make a better decision and put it in their hands. I hope you would have faith in the voters of Elmhurst to make this decision. I believe they have adequate resources to make that decision. Thank you.
Michael Cremery, 570 West Crockett.
Michael Crumry, 570 West Crockett. I'd like to start with a verse from the Bible, Luke 14:28. For which one of you, when he wants to build a tower, does not first sit down and calculate the cost to see if he has enough to complete it? So I'd like to review three items: the cost of the parking garage, the actual data in relation to the parking need, and the public input during the Zoning Planning Commission open hearing. Number one, the cost. The simple question before the City Council is, what is the return on our investment? What is the ROI for a six-story parking garage or even for a four-story garage? The projected cost for a six-story parking garage is in the range of 18 to $25 million. Easy math, $20 million. 14 aldermen, that's $1.5 million per alderman. I ask each one of you, respectfully, I ask each one of you, are you planning to spend $1.5 million each on a parking garage based on a parking study that has questionable data? Are you planning to spend $1.5 million each without input from the residents of Elmhurst? It's not your money. It's our money. The homeowners, the taxpayers of Elmhurst. City Council, Alderman, Mayor Morley, are you listening? Please provide economic justification for this expenditure. Please provide a detailed ROI. Number two, the parking data. Data provided during the ZPC public hearing that the city overestimated the projected number of parking spaces needed for future demand. The parking study indicated that we should build 5.34 spaces. The downtown plan, the Elmhurst downtown plan, recommends building in a range of 2.5 to 3.5 spaces per 1,000 square feet of developed property. Specifically, slides 38 through 39 from the applicant PowerPoint presentation on January 23rd. Quote, use the existing public parking supply and demand based on city data. Quote, identify two peak 1 hour periods. The consultant, hired and paid by the applicant, i.e. the city, used the supply and demand data provided by the applicant. Does not anyone find this approach to be inconsistent with business world standards? Identified two peak 1 hour periods. Do we build 12-lane highways to support the volume of traffic for the Chicago area morning and evening rush hours? Highways are built based on the average capacity that's needed. They are not built upon a single 1 hour time window of usage. Parking garages should be built with the same baseline logic. Build the garage based on average capacity needed, not based on a 1 hour window. A 4-story building with an additional 460 spaces will meet the needs of the community. Now please keep in mind, this is not an issue of compromise for 5 floors. How can it be when the data for the 6-story parking garage is incorrect?
Mr. Crumry,
If the
you're over
incorrect
your 3
data-
minutes. I'd ask if you'd wrap it up, please.
If the incorrect data indicated 12 stories, would we use 4 and 12 to compromise to 8? No, this needs to be about reviewing correct, accurate data to make the correct decision. Public input during the Zoning and Planning Commission, item 3. 486 people out of 492 stated they were against the parking garage. That's 99%. 15 of the 17 letters submitted into the public record during the hearing were against the parking garage. That's 88%. So I ask Alderman York, Alderman Dunn, Alderman Hipskin, Alderman Duder, are you willing to ask your constituents their input regarding a
Crumry.
6-story parking garage
Mr.
on a
Crumry.
ballot referendum?
You're over your 3 minutes. I asked you to wrap it up. In addition, please direct comments to the chair. Do not direct them to individual aldermen. So I'd ask you to please wrap up your comments.
If the collective answer to the from the FCA committee is no, then please provide justification for your position, especially in light of the 88 to 99% opposition to the 6-story parking garage that was presented to the ZPC and the data I brought to your attention tonight. Thank you.
Chris Sullivan, 235 North Addison.
Chris Sullivan, 235 Addison. I'm a member of the Association Board at the Townhomes of Normandy and also a member of the Board of Directors of Elmhurst City Center Corporation. I like the hot dogs too, but the reason I'm here today is because soon coming before the City Council will be the issue of the expiration of a small taxing district known as Special Services Area 7. This affects only 3 residential developments in downtown Elmhurst, and it's a tax of 1/2 of 1% of the equalized assessed value on our homes. The memorandum of understanding sent to the City Council when this tax was first enacted 10 years ago by the City Attorney listed the services that were to be performed on behalf of residents by Elmhurst City Center in exchange for this tax. They included street sweeping and snow plowing services, plantings, and seasonal decorations at Christmas time. In our case, at the Townhomes of Normandy, there is a city sweeper who brushes snow off the sidewalk early in the morning after a snow. However, to the best of my knowledge, nobody from the Elmhurst City Center has ever provided any snow plowing services to us. We've never had any planters out in front of our building, and there really isn't room for them because the sidewalk is narrow. People would trip over them. And there have never been any Christmas lights on trees in our parkway. We have no trees in our parkway. So we haven't received any services, nor do we particularly want them. We take care of all these things ourselves. We hire somebody to brush off the sidewalk after mowing the lawn and do the snow plowing, and we have our own Christmas decorations and our own flowers. So this doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to us. And we also have to bear the burden of being in the center of town and probably shouldn't be paying extra for it. We have a lot of litter from the businesses in town that we have to clean up. We have constant foot traffic from people who are going to visit those businesses, and occasionally when my wife and I walk out our front door in the evening, we are treated to the sights and sound of somebody relieving himself in our bushes after visiting one of those businesses in town. So I urge you, as you consider this expiration, that maybe it has no business taking place. It's a very small part of the Elmhurst City Center budget, but it's a burden to some of the residents in my building. And it could if a tax were to be shared by all the people who enjoy proximity to a downtown Elmhurst existed, that would make some sense, but it would include hundreds of residences, not just 3 buildings. Thanks very much.
Chris Hayat, 15 West 347 East Harvard Street. Oh, okay. That's all right. All right. How about Nolan Scher, 697 Spring Road?
Same deal.
Okay. All right. Claude Pagash, 566 West Gladys.
Claude Poggage, 566 West Gladys. I had the dubious honor of reading the paper and finding out I got a 13% increase in my water bill coming up. Well, I took the advantage of looking at the Treasurer's report for 2013. In 2013, City of Elmhurst paid DuPage Water Commission $4.6 million for water. They charge the people of Elmhurst $9.8 $5 million. Since discussion on the raise combined the sewage and water bill, 2013, the city collected $16.5 million. That's $16.5 million. They only paid $4.6 million back to the DuPage Water Commission. That includes sewage, the water bill. So you guys cleared $11 million. That also includes interest. And you always wind up with miscellaneous money. It's surprising. Also, you tend to pay the DuPage County Water Commission, and it always ends in pennies. Never what you collect. And what I'm told is, you had a consultant come in, and the water system is falling apart, and you don't have any money, and you got to spin up a special fund. And you're going to change the selling of water by 1,000 gallons to the public. See, the public's been paying by the cubic meter. And I brought this up before, but the city was charging the schools, the park district, I assume the library, assume the water for this building, the police station, fire stations, an extra $1 per cubic meter. Never got an answer on it. So what I really want to know is, out of $11 million, since the paper reported you only spent $900,000 a year for replacing water mains, what happened to the rest of the money? Because if it cost us almost $10 million to run the water department and the sewer department, something is entirely wrong with the whole system. We always hear about the fact there's got to be an increase, but the millions collected, we never know how they're spent. And don't tell me to run down to the library to look at the budget. The same thing is going to happen with this parking garage. You gentlemen just asked, how's it going to pay for itself? What is the return on it? You know what the return on it is? The public's going to pay for the maintenance. So the $20 million we spend, there'll be an annual fee to maintain it, because if you don't maintain it, it'll fall apart.
Mr. Prakash, you're at your 3 minutes. I'd ask that you wrap it up.
Certainly. So we change it to 1,000 gallons. We raise it up 13%. And I'm really going to be looking at that treasurer's report for 2014. Because with $16 million goes up 13%. Those little 2% and 3% raises you were talking about don't even exist.
Tamara Brenner, 137 North Caroline.
Tamara Brenner, 137 North Caroline. I just wanted to comment on a couple of the items on the agenda tonight. 6.11 about the push cart and the hot dog lady. I did attend one of the 3 committee meetings on that, and I was listening really hard to find out what the reason is, the real reason for why you want to remove this location for her license, and I didn't hear it there. It's being billed as a problem with congestion and safety in light of potential construction and so forth. Well, there's no construction happening right now. The empty lot on Addison now, that's a 5-year thing going on. It's an empty lot right now. If there's no construction going on there, why do you need to move the location? If you do move the location, the way I read the current ordinance, it requires it to be no less than 55 feet away from York Street. 55 feet is a long way back from the street, so it's not just moving across the street. Sightlines would totally change for no reason. Congestion, if you want to have foot traffic in the downtown, that's what we're hearing why we need this humongous parking garage, so we can have increased foot traffic, and so Elmhurst can be a destination location. Well, the hot dog lady's cart is way more of a destination and an attraction than a parking garage. Parking garage services attractions and destinations. It isn't itself a destination, but the council seems to think that it is. Again, until there's construction there, why move her? She requested it to be in that spot. She's been successful there, and she should stay. If there's a temporary problem, then make it a temporary solution. But what this city council does, and it's done it repeatedly for different issues, is create permanent solutions to temporary problems. You did it with the Glenview parking restrictions just a few weeks ago, and that's what you're doing here too. If it's a temporary problem, institute a temporary solution. The other thing that's interesting from tonight I found is the committee report 7.1, in which another business interest is requesting a handout from the city to help defray some of its costs of doing business in helping to bring the Chick-fil-A business there, because it had to engage in some legal matters or something to make payments on leases or amend leases and things. That's not the city's role, that's a business expense. And the fact that the report is signed by two individuals indicating that they would like it to pass is really disturbing. The city should let the businesses run their business. And just because the city is going to benefit from tax collections and so forth, the city benefits from tax collections from all of us that live here, but nobody's helping any of us defray our costs of hiring a real estate agent or a lawyer when we come by our houses. So this report should be declined by the council. Thanks.
Tamara McHugh, 611 South Linden.
Good evening. My name is Tamara McHugh of 611 South Linden Avenue. Coming before you tonight, speaking on behalf of Elmhurst Cool Cities as well as myself about the upcoming renewal of our residential electricity contract. First of all, thank you all for your work you've done and you are doing for our electricity needs. Your stewardship of this process is another responsibility that you've been tasked with and not one to take lightly. In the first aggregated contract term, we are pleased to have received renewable energy credits as part of the plan for the community with the added option of purchasing more. Now, as we go forward, I ask you to build upon that foundation and add more green energy, renewable energy credits, local energy from Illinois wind farms, and more. The City of Chicago has negotiated for this. Our community and other like-minded small communities need to push suppliers to allow us access to local energy as well. As you urge us to shop local, we urge you to shop local for green energy. There are many factors in choosing the right contract. Please don't let price be the only factor. We all make value versus worth decisions daily in our lives. We choose to pay more for things we believe in. I believe as an individual it's worth it to pay a few dollars more for green energy. Elmhurst Cool Cities believes it's worth it for you to act on behalf of our community at large and keep pushing the needle in this direction. We ask for more green energy through energy credits, renewable energy, and so on. Climate change, sustainability, and energy usage are global conversations. From the United Nations to corporate boardrooms to municipalities to individuals, we all must tackle this problem for today and for the future. Illinois is a leading state in electricity aggregation. As a premier Chicagoland community, please continue to build Elmhurst's efforts and step with these larger entities and increase our commitment to green energy. Thank you.
Last person to sign in, Jeff Budgel, 158 Oak. You pass? Okay. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, that's it for people who have signed up. Is there anybody in the audience who did not have an opportunity to sign up this evening on our sign-in sheet that would like to address the council? If so, please raise your hand. Anyone else? Yes, please. Please approach the microphone and give us your name and address, and we'll listen to what you have to say.
My name is Janet DeChellis. I live at 218 North Addison. I live in the Market Square Townhome Complex. Would like to set something straight first. It is no longer part of the Market Square condo complex. We are now separate completely. We took a survey amongst our owners, and it was found that out of the 26 owners, that only 18 voted, 16 voted to stay into the SSA number 7, and 2 voted to stay in. Our biggest issue, I believe, is that because we actually sit back, we do not see the Christmas lights, we don't see the planters. For years, we never received the snow plowing that we were entitled to. We would just have to walk out into the street. even after we had called in and requested extra help on it. It never came. We were told in the beginning of the SSA 7 that we would have the opportunity to opt out, and we were under the impression it would be an easy matter, and now it appears maybe that it's not as easy as we thought. We don't feel that a couple of the residential condos and townhomes should be responsible for carrying that tax for basically what we feel is the rest of Elmhurst. We're contributing to downtown Elmhurst almost every single day just by the fact that we live so close. I know my husband and I will not go to the show unless we can walk into town. We go to all the restaurants, we go to Walgreens, and when things are really great, we walk to Jewel. We are constantly on foot in Elmhurst. So I feel like we're paying the tax, and then we're paying the tax when we arrive at the establishment, and then we're paying the establishment. So I feel like we're really an overboard. Whereas people who get to say, when they sell their house or when they buy a house, perhaps a half mile away from downtown, a mile away, they still get the benefit of what perhaps the people in town are doing by saying, oh yes, I live in Elmhurst, and it's a great place, and it really has given me a good value on my home, and I suspect to do well by my home. But the problem is, they're not actually contributing like the 2 or 3 places that are bearing the cost. So I would suggest that we have the options of opting out for those that are there, or if it must stay in place, it should be the burden should be distributed among perhaps all the people of Elmhurst. Thank you.
Anyone else who did not have an opportunity to speak that would like to speak this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on. That concludes public forum portion of our meeting. On to agenda item number 5, announcements. Any announcements this evening? Clerk Spencer has an announcement.
Saturday, April 12th, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Over at Elmhurst College is Elmhurst Recycling Extravaganza. So if you need more information, you can get more on the city's website, but that's Saturday, April 12th, 9 to noon at the college.
Very good. Any other
Prospect entrance, I'm sorry.
entrances on Prospect Avenue and Walter Street? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other announcements this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda portion of our agenda. Agenda item number 6, is there anybody at this time who wishes to pull anything off the consent agenda for further discussion? Anyone? Alderman Bram.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Item 6.11.
Item 6.11. Anyone else have anything that they would like to have removed from tonight's consent agenda for further discussion? Seeing none, I will ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda less item 6.11. Motion to approve consent agenda, Alderman Deuter, second by Alderman Palumski. Clerk Spencer.
Deuter.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Pipskin.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Honquist absent. Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner absent. Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent.
12 ayes, 0 nays. That motion carries. Consent agenda minus item 6.11 passes. Agenda item 6.11, Clerk Spencer, it's a report out of Public Affairs and Safety. I would ask that you read the recommendation.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Public Affairs and Safety Committee that the city attorney be directed to prepare the appropriate ordinance to remove in its entirety Municipal Code Section 31.137 and to amend Municipal Code Section 31.134 to reflect the changes outlined above. Signed by Patrick Wagner, Chairman, Norman Leader, Vice Chairman, and Michael Honquist.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve the report and recommendation to put this before the council. Alderman Leader with the motion, Alderman Healy with the second. Alderman Leader.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I feel a little bit alone here tonight. Nevertheless, I will go forward. The committee, in discussing pushcart and special food dealer licenses, came to the firm conclusion that a safety issue exists in regards to the Schiller Passage due to congestion and pending construction of at least a 4-story parking deck on Addison Street. This construction has been fully authorized by the Elmhurst City Council, with all aldermen concurring. The committee expressed particular concerns over the safety and practicality of 2 of the current locations, Schiller Park East and the southwest corner of Addison and 2nd Street. The Public Affairs and Safety Committee is the only committee of the Elmhurst City Council that is specifically charged with matters of public safety. The committee, upon recommendation from city staff and after consultation with Police Chief Ruth and Fire Chief Bassador, determined that a change in the ordinance was solely dictated by our mandate to protect public safety. The main justification for civil government is the preservation of public safety. Because safety is our first and only concern, we would be unimaginative and negligent in the performance of our duty if we were not to behave in a proactive rather than reactive manner. If we err, we must always err on the side of safety. This matter reminds me of Mark Twain's remark uttered while he was still very much alive. He said, quote, "Reports of my death are greatly exaggerated," unquote. The impact of what we are doing tonight is being greatly exaggerated by some people. And in that spirit, if I may indulge myself, let me say that we are not, in spite of what some may believe, heartless ogres. A careful reading of our report will show that we are not recommending that the hot dog lady be tarred and feathered. We are not proposing to banish her to the outer reaches of Elmhurst, where there be dragons. And we are not proposing to assign her to the bottom of the quarry. No, very seriously and very factually, the main thrust of this change is to require the vendor to move some 60 feet. Yes, 60 feet. 20 yards. Now, from where I'm sitting here now, 60 feet is that back wall, and say 70 feet is that wall to the back wall. Just to give you some perspective on what we're asking to be done tonight. And we're asking her to move from a congested alley entrance to an open site by the Festive Fountain Plaza. The plaza site has the advantage of more, not less, foot traffic and more, not less, seating for customers. There are 17 benches in the plaza against 2 at the entrance of the alley on Schiller. Nothing could be more conducive to casual outdoor dining than abundant seating. It is completely inconceivable that any regular or new customers would be discouraged from patronizing the applicant by such a minor location change, considering that it is a more attractive location. According to records in the city clerk's office, the vendor has been at her present location at Schiller Passage East since 2004, some 10 years. She is concerned that she will not be as visible in the plaza site, and also about sight lines on Schiller Passage. In reality, there will be no sight lines on Schiller Passage during construction of the parking garage. The good news for her is that given the valuable and positive publicity that has been generated in local newspapers and through hundreds upon hundreds of her friends, supporters, and customers signing her petition, it is absolutely certain that she will be more visible rather than less at the plaza. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of people who are not aware of her existence are certainly aware of her now. This recommendation is in no way an adverse comment on her colorful presence or her worth to the downtown. The committee supports the report because we believe that no one individual will be hurt or inconvenienced by it. The only factor which we took into consideration in coming to our decision was our mandate to protect the public safety. I ask the City Council to support this report as written. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Leader. Any other comments or questions? Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I start in regards to the questions that I have on specifically about the report, and I have additional commentary outside of what the report states. But before I go there, I want to state one thing that I take very seriously. And Alderman Leader touched on the safety aspect, and that is a very serious issue. But the other serious issue here is, before we just start any discussion, move one step further, I want to remind everybody on the dais and the audience that we're discussing someone's livelihood. We're discussing their business. We're discussing their life. I take that very seriously when considering something that some may feel is trivial, but others may not. Some of the questions in regards to the report at hand, and then I will make statements outside of what the report states, because to me, Alderman Leader's comments about the statements in the report are not clear, and I need further clarification. I anticipated this report, this recommendation, to come from this committee 2 weeks ago, which the committee, as Alderman Leader stated, was discussed. This topic was discussed on multiple occasions, once on March 10th, also on March 24th. So the question, since Alderman Leader is here all by himself and it does not have his two counterparts, is what was the difference between the decision and the recommendation that was made on March 10th and the recommendation that is now before us today from the committee being on March 24th and on this agenda? From what I heard and from what I've been told was it was because an alderman was concerned that they wouldn't be here to provide their input. Well, Alderman Leader sits here alone. I guess that wasn't really relevant. The report, so that's the first question. What was the difference between what was decided on March 10th, then March 24th? Because to my understanding, the decision on this topic on March 24th was mere minutes. The report states in the first paragraph about safety concerns regarding usage of the Schiller Passage in regards to potential construction and congestion were reviewed, and I end quote. Potential? Are we really considering an ordinance change over potential construction? I think that's absurd. We do not create ordinances on what may or may not happen. The cool cars portion of this report also states the removal of this part of the ordinance due to the potential construction, and I won't go further on that. On paragraph 4, it talks about the permit fee, pushcart vendors of $500. I agree with the committee's recommendation here that it shouldn't be raised. One reason is because this permit fee has been the highest in probably all suburbs from the research that I have seen to date. So it should not be raised. Paragraph 5, and I quote, the committee expressed concerns over the safety and practicality of 2 of the current locations in regards to the current congestion and potential construction throughout the area. What are the specific concerns of just these 2 areas? Why are these 2 areas different than any others? What differentiates these 2 locations compared to not having the similar construction, congestion, or safety concerns at the other locations? We talk about safety, and I want to touch on safety. Does this look unsafe to you? This is the alleged mobile food vendor cart by the hot dog lady. I don't see congestion. I see 5 feet around this cart for all pedestrians to walk by. I don't see a problem with it. And so far, the report nor Alderman Leader's comments have actually stated that there's any issue with any congestion getting around that cart. And I will refer to this later in tonight's discussion, but I see a problem with this. What is this? A-frame signs.
Point of order. You should be directing your comments to the chair of the committee, not to the audience.
I'm speaking. Oh, I'll let you make the ruling, Mr. Mayor.
Point of order, he's correct. Please direct your comments to the chair, Mr. Bram.
Could I ask for what I said that was incorrect?
No, he's just asking that you direct your comments to the chair, that's all.
So does that mean look at?
Addressing the audience with your comments, you should be addressing the chair. That's what our rules state.
Well, those are words, not where I look. A-frame signs, sorry, I'll look at you, Mr. Mayor. A-frame signs, which are currently against today's ordinance. A safety issue, a huge safety issue. Look at how many of them are within walking distance of where the pushcart vendor would be. That, I say, is a safety issue. And I won't show all the various pictures of that, but I will show the one that was right alongside the pushcart vendor cart last year. Is that a safety issue? It might not, it must not be, because that ordinance has not been enforced. I will say, though, that if you did not believe that A-frame signs that are currently against ordinance are out on the sidewalk that are a safety issue, but the pushcart vendor is, this one that is knocked over and halfway into the street is definitely a safety issue. I don't think anybody would debate that. So I agree with Alderman Leader's comments about his committee, the Public Affairs and Safety Committee. They're mandated to protect safety. And those are the words that Alderman Leader stated. But I have not had any evidence in the report or by Alderman Leader's comments on what is the safety issue, other than something might occur down the road. So if something might occur, and I think one of the audience members mentioned it, down the road, are we going to construct a massive highway because we expect more traffic to our downtown area? It doesn't make sense to say what is the potential. So I ask Alderman Leader, if he may, to answer my questions on what was different between the March 10th and March 24th recommendation by the committee, and define what are these alleged safety concerns other than a potential garage going up a block away. And then I would also like to speak to later in regards to the history of this ordinance, since I was one of the few aldermen that were around when this ordinance was created, and many of you who have seen the revisions have concurred that these locations defined in the ordinance today have been chosen for their, safety. That's why those locations were changed, or were chosen. Thank you.
Alderman Bram, I may be able to help you on one of your questions. Your question with regard to the submission of the report to council, is that one of your questions? And why there was a 2-week delay, or was it what was discussed between the two meetings?
I was informed that there was a 2-week delay because one of the aldermen wanted to speak to the issue.
I had a conversation with Chairman Wagner, who's not here, with regard to the report. There was things in the draft of the report that he had that he didn't like, and he's told me that he was going to make some changes. I don't know what the changes were. We didn't discuss it. So I'm just telling you, in that respect, with regard to the report and the timing to get to it, that's a conversation I had with the chairman. I don't know what the specifics were. He wasn't happy with the first draft of the report.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I was informed, and obviously we all have our committee meetings at the same time, that there was no report provided to the committee on March 10th, but they came to a conclusion which is identical to what the conclusion is in this recommendation today. So I would like, since Alderman Leader is the only one who is here for that committee, to speak to what has changed from that March 10th committee review and that March 24th, which is now before us, referral.
Was there an additional meeting? Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm asking, as you stated, you're not aware of what those changes were between the two?
Yeah, I'm telling you that Alderman Wagner said he wanted to change parts of the report. I don't know what they were.
Well,
but it's not a requirement for the report to be approved in committee. In fact, it's often the practice that a draft gets distributed after.
Understood. But as I just stated, I'm asking the only individual here from the committee to speak to what those changes were.
And as Alderman Mulliner pointed out earlier, and as I'll remind the council, during spirited conversations such as this, we're all aware that comments should be directed directly to the chair. I'll certainly give the alderman the option to answer those questions. Alderman, we'll give Alderman Leader a chance to comment. Alderman Hipskin.
I was just wondering if you could pass the pictures around. I couldn't see them as well as they were up pretty quickly. So if we could just pass them and see them. Thank you. That's all I wanted.
Alderman Leader, is there any comments you want to add to what you've heard?
To the question of Alderman Bram, of what happened or why we did this or that, I know of nothing myself. I remember nothing. I would say that Fire Chief Bassador is here. He attended the meeting. Maybe he could, maybe there was something technical, but I recall nothing of significance.
Okay. Any additional comments? Alderman Polomsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank the committee for their work on this and staff, and I wanted to address a couple of the comments we've heard tonight. I would agree with Alderman Leader that some of the comments about the recommendation coming out of committee have been greatly exaggerated, and I would also agree that there's been a lot of valuable and positive publicity. But I also would want to address a comment that we're talking about someone's livelihood, and I think we need to talk about this as a vendor location, not as a specific vendor. That said, I don't see having a vendor operate in this location to pose any more of a hazard than a sidewalk sale or any of the other operations in town. And while I respect the work of the committee, I cannot support the report. Thank you.
Alderman Levin.
I'm having some concerns now, I'll tell you, that I didn't have before, and one of them is that it was brought, and maybe I should have seen it myself, but I looked at the map, the aerial photo that was shown of the location, and it shows, and I was told that the proposed substitute location, which is currently existence, is directly across the street, and it shows it right on the corner of Schiller and York. But then it was brought to my attention by one of the speakers that the requirement is to be 55 feet off of York. And so when I take my little to scale chart and put it against the side of the street, unless I'm missing something, that 50, and I don't know what the scale is here, I understand what Alderman Leader said, but that 55 feet seems to put it between, if it's not up against the building that Chipotle's in, it's certainly between the fountain and the building. And that was not what was represented to me as being where the location is, because I thought the location is where X marks the spot. I thought I'd find treasure there. So that's the concern I have, and my suggestion is, unless someone has the direct answer for that that tells me it's not back there, and it's got to be 4 feet north of Schiller, which puts it right in the sidewalk between the fountain and the building, which is certainly more of a safety hazard than the current location. Unless someone can tell me I'm wrong, then I'm going to, depending on the answer, maybe move to send it back to committee, because I don't see how this works.
I know Mr. Grabowski has additional information with regard to the exact location in the map.
Staff looked at the 55 feet, and that puts it basically at the center line of the fountain, directly south of the fountain. And as I believe the code says, it's at least 4 feet off of the street, which would put it mid-sidewalk, but it could be pushed a little further back to get out of the actual walkway area.
And I guess a follow-up question would be, did the committee look at the exact location? Because I understand perhaps the safety issue that's been raised, but I don't see how, if it's between the fountain and the sidewalk, it's a better location, because now you're blocking access on a fairly narrow area between the south end of the fountain and 4 feet off of Schiller Street. And why is the X where it is when it should be somewhere else?
The requirement for the 55 feet and 4 feet was put in place in 2004 when the ordinance was initially drafted. That is not a change that's being recommended right now. The X on the map, I would admit, is off from where the actual 55 feet is in the ordinance.
Well, I'm going to move to send this back to committee for consideration of the location of where this is going to wind up, because I don't see that it's necessarily doable, and I don't think it's been fairly presented to me as an alderman of where that's going to be for my consideration.
Point of order, is that a...
That is not a valid motion.
Yeah.
I'll make it a motion to lay on the table.
I can simplify. As a courtesy, we allow committee members to pull back to their own committee. I can ask Alderman Leader if that suffices, if he would pull it back to his committee. Alderman Leader, would you be willing to pull this back to committee?
I'm at a disadvantage because I have neither of my compatriots here. Normally, that's what happens.
I understand. So that having been said, we'll go back to Alderman Levin's motion. And what's your motion, Alderman Levin?
Motion to lay on the table.
Give me a second here, Alderman Levin.
Point of order,
I've got a pending motion before me.
You can make a point
Mayor,
of
if I
order.
may.
Make a point of order.
Yeah, go ahead, Alderman Bram.
So isn't there, and maybe City Attorney Storino can correct me, but isn't there something in Robert's Rules or our ordinance where if the majority of the council votes on the motion to send back to committee?
No, 3 members can delay it for 2 weeks for voting, but not
Understood
take it
that.
back to committee.
That's correct. Mayor, if I may, the motion to, it's in our...
No, I got it. Motion to lay on the table?
In our ordinance.
Where in our ordinance?
206U.
1 minute. oh, land. Procedural measure, I think there's no, we don't know what the motion is. That's really what it is. But it can be, it's just gotta make a ruling. No, it's not. Right, it's not debatable. No. And then what happens? Is that when it would? Yes. Motion to take somewhere from the table we adopted at the same meeting.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Alderman Gutenkopf.
A motion to lay on the table prevents any further discussion about this.
Yes, it's not debatable.
So, no. I understand that the motion itself is not debatable, but it also prevents any further discussion about the underlying recommendation, so I don't understand how that clears up the problem.
I agree, and that's the conversation I'm having with the city attorney.
Doesn't have a second, so it fails for lack of a second.
Okay. Lay on the table, in effect, is a procedural motion that basically shelves something almost indefinitely. May I, and I don't see a second, Alderman, may I ask you what your intent is?
Well, because it is not, cannot be brought back to committee until the chairman and or the other members return, at the next meeting, someone may move to take it off the table and then either have action or send it back to the committee.
You can postpone to date certain and have a debate from...
I'm not getting a second on this one, so...
I'll second.
Well, let him add it so that it comes back to the council meeting at least. Second to the...
Yeah, give me a... Time to create a special order and time fixes, motion requires 2/3 vote. Motion postponed becomes a general order. Might be taken up. Okay.
I know it's not debatable, and I would amend the motion. My only concern is, I don't know when the start of the season is. When's hot dog season, you know?
Let me see if I can get that information before you ask for a second. So there's a motion on the table to postpone to date certain. In this case, I'm going to assume the date certain is our next council meeting. How does this affect? But the question is, this is an ordinance change that would prohibit it would prohibit one of the locations. So would we issue a permit and then retract it?
Well, we have not issued the permit, not knowing what was going to happen.
And when is there a date? Is there a date in the ordinance?
It's an annual permit, so they can, 12 months a year if they choose. It's up to the person who has the permit.
Okay. We are entertaining a motion to postpone to date certain, which would be, there is nothing in our ordinance, there's no date with regard to this specific ordinance and the issuing of permits. So I have a motion to postpone to date certain of the next city council meeting.
I will make that as the substitute motion. It wasn't mine. If the second is okay with that, then I will.
So withdraw the original motion. You're making it as your primary motion. And it's debatable, but only to the proprietary nature of the postponement in itself, not the underlying issue that we're talking about. So we have a motion to postpone to date certain. We've got a second to postpone to date certain.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, it has to be motion to continue to the date of the next meeting. The date certain has to be stated.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Date certain. What's the?
April 21st.
April 21st.
Motion to postpone to further discussion, April 21st. And a second.
Is that debatable?
Is there any comments with regard to the postponement of this discussion and the date? Alderman York.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just to clarify then, so we're not going to talk about it again. Can it go back to committee for discussion in committee?
No, not this report.
Thank
this
you.
report will come, if this motion carries, the report will come back in 2 weeks. Same report. Alderman Levin.
When it comes back, if the committee wants to send it back to committee, they could pull it back.
In theory, the committee could do that. Alderman Leader, then I'll go to Alderman Braham.
If it is the if it is the will of the council to do this, I accept it.
Alderman Bram?
Thank you. This is probably more of an administrative question, but it does hinge on where I go with this vote. Oh, my time is up.
Very good.
But in regards to that, will, in this case, the applicant, the hot dog lady, be issued a license since the application has been submitted until this issue is resolved for the current location?
Well, right now, I know city staff was waiting for this meeting.
We have not issued any permits, not knowing what the ordinance was going to be.
But we have a current ordinance on the books, which
We do.
includes this location.
Does, that's correct.
So my question being is, since this would delay the resolution to this an additional 2 weeks, will a license or permit be issued to the hot dog lady since the application has been pending for weeks, until we resolve this issue?
Alderman Bram, I asked the city attorney, what's the implication if we issue a permit and then we change the law of a permit that hasn't been issued? He doesn't have a specific answer yet of how we would move forward. Does that make sense?
No.
No.
We might have to change the report to revoke.
If you issue the license and we change the law, whether or not she's going to be able to keep the license or not, I'm not prepared to opine on that right at the moment.
In previous discussion of this ordinance, there was a license distributed with that same contingency when the city center fountain was installed. This is the history lesson I was going to provide earlier before this motion. I believe in
Well, let's keep it to the postponement. Let's just keep it to the...
I agree, but I'm giving background on why I believe, since we've done it before...
We should postpone the discussion?
No, that we should...
That's what we're talking about. We're just talking about postponing the discussion, not the underlying issue, not whether we're going to issue a permit or not.
But that hinges on my decision on what we should do here.
Okay.
So it ties in, just that simple.
Okay. Are you finished? Or I was going to go to Alderman Gutenkopf. Go ahead.
Am I getting an answer or no?
Well, I don't think this is, I'll give the city manager a shot at it, see what happens. Sorry, Jim. No, I think it's a gray area. I think the answer is to get a legal opinion on this is a gray area, but.
And that's what I was going to say, is I'd want to talk to the city attorney about that to see where we would lie with issuing a permit and then revoking it if the ordinance changes. So I guess I can't answer your question tonight until I talk to the city attorney about it.
Anytime we issue a permit or a license, we always have the option to revoke that under undue circumstances, correct? I mean, we do that with violations for liquor licenses, as an example. We do that for many of things today, so I'm just trying to get clarity on what needs to be opined upon for this particular question.
Go ahead.
In the example, Alderman, of a liquor license, that would be a violation.
Yeah.
The revocation would be a violation. In this instance...
Not the best example, but I'm trying
In
off
this
the top of my
instance,
head.
the license that you would be issuing, there would be no real violation except that the law changed, and it changed subsequent to the issuance of the license. So all I'm really saying is, I'd like to have the opportunity to make positive that ruling. In some instances, we call those things non-conforming. I don't know that it would be non-conforming in this. It's not actually ever been utilized in that way that I've seen for a license, but I'm giving you my thoughts as I'm trying to think this through on a run. And at the moment, I guess I'd support having at least a 2-week period to come back and provide that opinion. before giving it to you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Levin.
I think it's a point of order. When I made a motion to send it back to committee, it was ruled something we couldn't do, which I thought it was, and it is HH of our ordinance, which
Hold on a
reads
second
that-
there, Mr. Levin.
Just to make this as complicated as possible.
Yes, and I appreciate that. What,
Reads, reports of committees.
1 second, please. Yeah, so you're asking to defer debate, not,
No, the HH says that upon request of any two aldermen present, any report shall be deferred without debate to the next meeting of the council.
it's not going back to committee.
That's what you want to do, isn't it?
Same thing.
You can affect the same outcome if you want to defer debate versus postpone to date certain. It'll get you the same, but this doesn't send it back to committee either.
I'll leave it stand, sorry.
And it doesn't solve the problem of whether or not you can issue the license now and then revoke it.
Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to take this discussion on postponement in a slightly different direction. I'm having a hard time deciding whether I would support postponing debate because the red X on a picture was a little off from where it actually should have been. The underlying tenet of the report is that the current position is a safety issue. It's not where we want the hot dog lady to set up shop. So either you support or don't support the fact that where she is now currently is a safety hazard. I don't know that we want to get hung up in, well, where she has to go affects whether it is or isn't a safety issue. So I understand that may affect how some aldermen may vote, but I don't see, in my case, it won't. But just because the red X was off on a picture a little bit doesn't change the underlying.
Alderman Healy, therefore,
I will not support any motion to postpone the debate. I think we need to settle this tonight, let the woman run her business. That takes care of the discussion about whether we can issue a license or not. I understand Alderman Levin's concern, but to me, that's not a valid reason to postpone the debate.
okay. Alderman Levin.
Without debating it, the reason I want to send it back and postpone it is because the fountain wasn't there when the ordinance was written. So my concern is, where does it put the X before the fountain was in a different location?
Okay. Any other comments as it relates to the current motion, which is, we'll call it a motion to postpone to Clerk Spencer?
The way I have it is to postpone to a date certain, which would be April 21st.
Is that the correct date for the next meeting?
Yes.
I don't have my calendar.
Yes.
Alderman Mulliner, did you have something you wanted to add? Okay. Anyone else want to add? Alderman Gutenkopf. And then I'll go to Alderman Kennedy. Sorry, I didn't see there, Alderman Kennedy. No problem.
Yeah, and I think this is still relevant to the postponement, because the postponement is about the whole, what we're postponing is the whole decision about where push carts can go in downtown. What precipitated the discussion was whether or not the intersection of the Schiller Passageway and York is an appropriate place, as is the southeast corner of Addison and Second. So the new, what we're really approving is a new ordinance that identifies pushcart locations. So where the definition of the pushcart location is germane to this conversation. Exactly what we're saying and where we're going. So, you know, as much as we want to frame this around a specific vendor, because at the moment it's only affecting one specific vendor, we're saying if we approve this report, in 2 weeks, if that's what we're going to do, that we've identified a key specific location for pushcart vendors. And so I think this question of exactly where we're locating the pushcart vendors is an appropriate one. And I do want to see it located appropriately on a map, although I must say I'm a bit conflicted because I really hate postponing the conversation because so many people have spent a lot of time and energy to be here to hear us talk about it. So I think what I'm talking in a very loopy way is that the conversation really needs to be about exactly where we're putting pushcart locations, and so it's really important for us to know where that is, where on the map this is, and what are the circumstances around it now. So while I appreciate other comments about that, it's going to be really important for us to know where on the map pushcarts can go.
So you support postponing? Alderman Kennedy, as it relates to the postponement of this discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There was a point made by one of the aldermen about us not knowing where that could be. I believe I heard City Manager Grabowski state that it would be that 55-foot line is about the center line of the fountain. So if you look at the map, or if you can blow it up better on Google Maps, there are locations around that point of the fountain where the pushcart could go and still meet the requirements of what the ordinance is stating, while still being able to remove the safety issue. So I'm not in support of delaying, because I think we have enough information to be able to move forward. I would state also that if the committee feels after this discussion that they want to further modify that, that's up to them to decide that they want to do that. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll summarize what I've heard about the postponement. The primary reason I've heard for the postponement is that there's a map in the report that is incorrect. I don't think it was intended to be, well, it's incorrect. Question was asked, city manager states that what the current ordinance indicates is it's about in line with the fountain, 4 feet or more off of Schiller. But I understand that there's some folks who want to take a closer look at that. Is there any other comments as it relates to the location that gives anybody reason to want to postpone? Because that's what I've heard the postponement is. Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I don't know if this was the case at the time, but even the 4 feet north, that is, it's required to be off Schiller. When we talk about the location by the fountain, there's now a bump out, so I think 4 feet north actually might be too far away from the curb. If that makes sense, you actually, 4 feet moves them more into the center of the walkway than I think might be intended. And I think this just goes to, there have been some changes in the fountain area from the time the ordinance was originally created that make it, I think, important to reconsider the location that would be remaining. So I support the motion to postpone it, to take a closer look at the location that would remain.
Okay. Alderman Brand.
I can't support the motion to postpone. As I've already stated, there was, at least in my view, a 2-week delay already within the committee with no, at least nobody here has spoken to any changes between the initial recommendation and what we see before us today. This applicant has submitted the application. The check has been submitted. It has been cashed by the city of Elmhurst. And due to the fact that I cannot get a definitive answer, in all due respect to our city attorney, I can't support the motion of delaying this. I think we need to vet this and make a decision here tonight, because postponing it is not going to do any bit of difference between now and in 2 weeks.
Okay. We have a motion before us to postpone to date certain, which is April 21st.
2014.
Seeing no additional comments, I will ask for Clerk Spencer to call the roll on the motion of postponing this conversation or this debate to April 21st. Clerk Spencer.
Levin.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Nay.
Polumsky.
Aye.
Graham.
No.
Hipskin.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Healy.
No.
Onquist absent. Kennedy.
No.
Mulliner.
No.
Wagner absent. Did I get everybody? It looks like 7 ayes, 5 nays, and 2 absent.
7 ayes, 5 nays, that motion carries. Postpone to date certain.
Point
Point of order, is that the rule of 7?
No, it's just a simple majority. Simple majority, motion carries. That concludes debate on that. Agenda item number 7, committee report 7.1. Elmhurst Crossing Shopping Center, a report out of finance. Clerk Spencer.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Finance, Council Affairs, and Administrative Services Committee that the City Council direct the City Attorney to prepare a cost-sharing agreement between the City of Elmhurst and Federal Construction, Inc., whereby the City of Elmhurst will waive its right pursuant to the 2003 agreement between the city and Federal to the first 2 years of the annual 10% of the net rental revenue of a new outlot development in the amount of approximately $22,000 as the city's share of the extraordinary costs incurred to obtain tenant approvals for the Chick-fil-A outlot development. The City of Elmhurst will also obtain a guaranteed 10 years performance of the net rental revenue at the minimum of $22,000 per year of that agreement. Signed by Kevin L. York, Chairman, Bob Dunn, Vice Chairman, unsigned by Stephen W. Hipskin, Marty Deuter.
I need a motion to approve recommendation report as written to bring it before the council. Alderman York with a motion, Alderman Dunn with a second. Alderman York, your report.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to I want to look at the report because in listening to Clerk Spencer read it, I think there's an error in the report on the $22,000 per year. The annual amount of the 10% of the rent share is $11,000 per year. So there is a clerical error in this report.
Where, was it both locations?
So I don't know, after we've gone through all this tonight, I don't know what we need to do to get that clerical
Well, we can
error.
call it a Scrivener's error.
Scrivener's error.
Scrivener's
Sure, we
error,
can.
and correct it. Scrivener's error on its face. It doesn't change the overall,
Right.
what you're asking for, except the dollar amount, which I think everyone here understands. It's 11,000.
Right. Just so everybody's clearly understands.
So in the last paragraph, Alderman York, is $22,000 listed twice.
Right, 22,000 is two years. It's less than 10% of the extraordinary costs that the developer.
Is the first one? City Manager Grabowski has a question for you, Alderman York, before we move forward.
Okay.
The question you're asking about is when the city clerk stated 22,000 per year, was that the last
Yes,
reference?
the last.
What that sentence says was that this agreement will also obtain a specific performance guarantee from Federal Construction whereby the city will be guaranteed 10 years performance of the net rental revenue at a minimum of 22,000 per year of that agreement. That is not correct.
That's not correct.
hearing,
It's
so-
11,000.
Okay, it's 11,000. You're correct, I apologize.
In both areas?
In both, no.
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 Just the
The
first
second one
Second, last area.
is that we will be guaranteed a minimum of 11,000.
In the last sentence is the only
Yes.
22,000 that needs to be corrected to 11.
Got it.
That's correct. My apologies.
That's right, no problem.
Okay, so Scrivener's error noted in the last sentence of the recommendation. The city of Elmhurst will also obtain a specific performance guarantee from Federal Construction, Inc., whereby the city will be guaranteed 10 years' performance of net rental revenue at a minimum of $11,000 per year of that agreement. So the Scrivener's error is in that last line, and it's changing 22 to 11.
That is
Is that correct, Alderman York?
That is correct.
Okay,
Your Honor.
noting that Scrivener's error, your report.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to turn the floor over to Alderman Dunn to give his thoughts on this report, and I'll follow up.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman York. This committee spent a lot of time weighing in on this, researching it, working with city staff and the applicant, and we do appreciate city staff's support in getting us the information we needed to really understand this issue, because it was quite complicated going into it. I don't think a lot of the people on the committee really had a lot of background on this project before we saw it before committee. But I think we recently had a Chick-fil-A go into town. A lot of people were very excited about that. I certainly was one of them. City's happy about that, as well as the residents. Chick-fil-A's a nationwide chain with 1,700 store locations, and as of middle of last year, there were about 15 in the Chicago area, and Elmhurst was vying for one of those. This is a very successful, reputable business, and it's a very charitable business also in terms of Chick-fil-A. Give a lot to the communities that they're involved in, to the tune of $68 million nationwide for scholarships and food donations. Very, very solid business. Those are the types of businesses that we cherish in this town. The shopping center owner, Federal Construction, started working with the city staff in October of 2012 at the prospect of luring Chick-fil-A into town. There was a prime location for it in that outlot right in front of the Kohl's and Dominic's area there. The city was quite interested in having this business come into town. They are not only a reputable business, but also one that's very successful, generating a lot of sales and also sales tax for the areas that they do their business. Federal also was quite interested in bringing this tenant into town because they generally would have a very long-term potential to remain in a particular area. The estimated benefit to the city was approximately $70,000 per year. That is a combination of sales tax and rental income, approximately. The city of Elmhurst, we work with the business community to provide incentives for them to attract businesses and also retain those. We have retail grants. We've given a few of those out. Those were $10,000 each. We gave 2 of those out in the past 6 months or so. Also, sales tax incentives, which we had one with the Napleton Group that was approved in recent months. And also, we have TIF incentives. We're familiar with the Mariano's incentive that the city gave to Mariano's on the order of $1.25 million. The federal had aggressively marketed this site and this opportunity to Chick-fil-A. Part of this development process was to get approval from the existing tenants in those properties at the Elmhurst Crossing Shopping Center. Many of those tenants had terms in their leases where they had to approve any additional build-outs in the parking lot, especially if they impacted their parking. With that development, the negotiations to benefit both the federal, the shopping center owner, and the city, the federal incurred about $250,000 in costs. A lot of these were...
Point of order, could the alderman please address the chair? Touche.
Alderman Dunn. I look forward to your comments.
Okay, certainly. So the federal construction incurred about $250,000 in costs to secure this tenant, and that was to the benefit of both the city and federal. The federal asked for, as I mentioned before, they began working with the city in October of 2012. The committee began discussing this last month and had 2 meetings to review the background of this particular project. It was felt by the committee that if this, if federal had not given these renegotiated payments to their tenants, that the city would not have been able to, or federal would not have been able to bring in this tenant. In some of our other incentive criteria, we use a but-for criteria, and certainly that was the case, that if federal had not aggressively marketed this, worked very closely with their tenants, and negotiated agreements with them to be able to bring in this entity, this Chick-fil-A would not have been built. There's a terminology in the settlement agreement, which was signed back in 2003 between the city and federal construction, that the city was to enjoy 10% of the rental income of any property that would come into that location. So this is a very unique situation. The city is in essence a business partner with this particular entity. We are getting a rental benefit from them. We're also getting a very healthy sales tax from Chick-fil-A being there. So in light of the fact that this was a very unique situation, it was a very desirable tenant that was a high revenue generator for the city, on the order of $70,000 a year. We felt that what was being asked, the 2 years forgiveness on the first 2 years of rent, which amounts to approximately $22,000, was a very modest fair and equitable request in that this, if it was not for the expenses and the extraordinary expenses that were incurred, Chick-fil-A would not be operating today. So I would urge you to consider these factors and that this is a business partner for the city. We've been working with them since the 70s, and we believe this to be a very fair and reasonable approach to this particular request. Thank you.
Alderman York.
Thank you, Your Honor. You know, for me, it all goes back to the settlement agreement that's included in the materials that you have in your information this evening. As Alderman Dunn said, goes back to 2003. I think when this was contemplated by previous administrations and okayed by the council at that time, I would suspect that the likelihood, everybody's anticipation of the likelihood of development there was probably pretty slim to none. And I think when we first brought this to committee, I was kind of not really very accepting of the whole premise of it. But as I gathered all the information and had staff gather the information for it, it became a little bit more clear to me that we had an extraordinary effort by the developer relatively unilaterally, simply because it was appealing to them as well from a business viewpoint, but also during the time before they came to city staff in 2012, they were working on this for a long time, and as everybody can remember, that was during some pretty bleak times here in the city economically, and we didn't have a whole lot of excess staff laying around to help them, get all this brought to the table. So, as I listened to the developer speak about it, and as I discovered the information here, it seemed like a reasonable ask, and I think that as a committee, we at least owe it to a great business partner to present the facts, research it, see if it's got credibility. We've done all that, and have everybody have the opportunity to weigh in on it. This is a business that, as Alderman Dunn said, will generate between $60,000 and $90,000 a year in sales tax and food and beverage tax, and couple that with $11,000 in rent, and that's $100,000 that we're going to have in our budget that, honestly isn't in this year's budget because we didn't know about it. So, I mean, this is a $100,000 add to our budget indefinitely, as this developer typically doesn't sell properties, but we also got them to agree that if they sold the property tomorrow and this were okayed, we'd get 10 years of payment on this rental. So that's absolutely above and beyond what they would have to do. I think this is just another one of the cases where it's important that Elmhurst remain a business-friendly environment. I think when businesses are talking about coming to a city, they often talk to other businesses in that city and get their feedback, and word gets around. So I would ask for support of this consideration as well. Thank you.
Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The committee spent quite a bit of time discussing this issue on 2 separate occasions, and both times the discussion was thoughtful and thorough. Regardless of the outcome, I hope it's evident to all that this request was carefully considered. I didn't sign the committee report, and there are 3 primary reasons. First, the settlement agreement provides for revenue sharing, but not cost sharing. And in fact, the agreement explicitly states the parties shall bear their own costs in connections with all activities concerning the foregoing. Second, it's not clear to me that the cost to obtain the tenant approvals for the outlet development, while they were significant, are unusually high. As was described by the owner's agent in our committee meeting, anytime something is asked of tenants, they want to know what they get in return. Third, and most important, I believe we should limit our business development incentives, which in this case is an offset in city revenue, to businesses that have not yet committed to an Elmhurst location or expansion. In my mind, a business that is up and running or development incentives that attracted a business that is up and running should not be eligible for an incentive. The city works hard to attract business to Elmhurst, and I think incentives should be used sparingly and strategically. I don't believe the approval of an incentive or a cost sharing after a business has opened is strategic.
Alderman Gutenkopf.
In addition to those sentiments, which I support wholeheartedly, I think that we need to take a look at the committee report. The committee made several bullet points outlining why this cost-sharing request, kind of identifying what went into their decision. One of those points states, it is reasonable that a business would seek support in this situation. And I challenge that notion. Why is it reasonable for the shopping center to seek support in this situation? First of all, they've come to us after the fact. The but-for test does not apply in a situation like that. We apply that test when we're talking about using public money to support private development. In this instance, the developer will enjoy substantial additional rental revenue that they weren't getting. But I think what it really boils down to is a fundamental accounting principle called cost of doing business. The developer made a choice to expand their outlot and incurred expenses to do that, so that they could enjoy additional rental revenue from an additional business. The agreements that were made internally within the shopping center between businesses over what could go where are not under the city's control, and I don't think it's our obligation to offset them. I'd like to use another analogy, perhaps a personal analogy that many taxpayers can relate to. I decide to sell my house, and I engage a realtor to help me with that. When my house sells, I'm going to have to pay that realtor. But the city may enjoy increased property tax revenue because presumably I'm going to sell my house for more money than I paid for it. That may affect the amount of property tax that the next owner's going to have to pay. The city's going to enjoy some additional revenue. I can't go back to the city and say, well, you got more money out of my selling my house. You should help me offset the cost of the realtor. And I see this is exactly that kind of scenario. I appreciate the work that went into bringing a new revenue-generating business into our community. I think that's great. But I also think we need to be held to our original agreement, and I don't see why it's reasonable that we extend ourselves and expend taxpayer money to do this. Thank you.
Alderman Palomsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would agree with, well, I want to thank the committee for the report, and I understand there's been thorough discussion, and I talked with Director Gaston to get some more information. I think there's a lot of background here. But knowing that there's no obligation for us, that it is our decision, this $22,000, I think we need to think carefully that when a business requests assistance through grants or tax incentives or revenue share, we have to carefully consider the need, starting with the question, would this development or improvement happen without our intervention, or the but-for argument, and where I see it as without us becoming involved, us, the city. And in this case, the answer isn't yes, it would, but yes, it has. And in making a decision, we need to consider the potential burden on the business requesting the assistance. And one could argue that $22,000 is a small fraction of the revenue the city will see this year, and that it's new revenue, but I think the more sound argument is additional $22,000 might not be necessary for this corporation to see a healthy return on their investment in a new outlet in Elmhurst Crossing. I do recognize there was an extraordinary effort made by this company in seeking and incorporating a new business, but I also am aware, I was just contacted by a business owner in downtown a couple weeks ago who had made some significant renovations but doesn't qualify for the community grant. And I think we need to recognize, especially knowing with TIP 4 getting going, we're going to be receiving a lot of requests for our financial assistance, and we need to make these decisions carefully and strategically, as Alderman Deuter pointed out. Thank you.
Any additional comments? Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I look at this slightly differently. I certainly understand both sides of the argument. I believe that there were costs that went above and beyond what would be considered normal in a situation like this. But when I look at that Route 83 and St. Charles development in its entirety, it's a TIF district in and of itself, and it's been highly successful for us. We've got a long history working with this particular developer, and I would challenge anybody on the dais to say that development and working with this developer has been anything but successful. Now, specific to the question at hand, if somebody would have come to me as a member of the council ahead of time and said, if the city were willing to invest $22,000, we'd bring a Chick-fil-A to Elmhurst, and did that ahead of time, I know I would have jumped at that opportunity, and I'm guessing that most, if not all, aldermen would be on board with a $22,000 investment to bring a chain like Chick-fil-A and the added revenue dollars that it'll bring to Elmhurst. So to me, the question becomes before or after. It's not ideal, and I understand the argument against. It's almost, if you'd asked us ahead of time, that certainly would look better optically, but they didn't. So they asked us after the fact to help offset some of the expense, some of the extraordinary expense that they incurred. Extraordinary might be a little too much, but certainly I believe that they incurred expenses above and beyond what would be considered normal for developing an outlot. And for me personally, to tell them, no, we're not going to help you because you asked after the fact, that doesn't sit real well with me. That's not how I do business professionally with a partner. That's not how I do business personally with a partner, and I believe in this case a developer has been a good partner to Elmhurst. $22,000 is a lot of money, I understand that. We are getting a payback on that. So for that reason, I'm going to support the report and understand that those that won't support it, but to me, it's a matter of good business with a partner that's been good to us. Thank you.
Any additional comments? Alderman Levin.
I just want to explain that because my firm represents Federated and because I have personally performed legal services unrelated to this, I will be voting present on this issue.
Thank you, Alderman Levin. Any other comments or questions? Alderman Gutenkopf.
We had a protracted conversation earlier tonight about a business that's been in town for 23 years, but it certainly doesn't generate a lot of money for the community. So is this really about the longevity and the amount of time this business has been here, or is it about power? Because we're going to upset the livelihood of a business that's been here for a long time but has no power. And tonight we're going to give $22,000 to a business that doesn't need it. Develop this anyway is going to see increased revenue because now they've got more rent. When we had all these people that came here tonight, and all these people that signed these petitions, and all these people that cared a lot about a small business, we don't care as a council. But we're throwing money at somebody who doesn't need it, isn't going to notice it, and is generating a bunch more money for themselves because they're such a good friend of ours. This just sickens me. I think it's ridiculous. I think we throw taxpayer money all over the place at stuff that we shouldn't be funding, and clearly I'm upset and angry about it, and I'm clearly going to vote no, and obviously I'm not going to change anybody's mind.
Alderman Mulliner hasn't spoken. You'll go to him, then Alderman Healy.
First off, I just want to make sure that everybody understands I care very much about every business in this community, as I think everybody on this council does. I think it's very important for us to make sure that everybody understands we're trying to do what's in the best interest of the community. The more economic development that we do in this community, the better it is, whether it's a small business, whether it's a large business, whether it's a large corporation. All of that helps the community. This is a deal that took a significant amount of time time to put together. It's something that we needed to have happen at that corner to help to bring in more traffic into that corner. And this is an opportunity for us to help them out a little bit to make sure that that business stays there. We've got some empty stores in there right now that we need to get filled. And I fully support this movement. It was what we kind of agreed to a long time ago. It may not be exactly what we agreed to, but it is pretty much what we wanted to get done a long time ago.
Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a clarifying question, if I may. We didn't take action tonight on anything hot dog related, do we? I may have been confused.
That is correct.
So it was postponed, right?
Any other comments? You are correct, it was postponed.
Thank you.
No other comments. Clerk Spencer, please call the roll on the motion before us regarding the committee report 7.1.
York.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Polumsky.
No.
Graham.
No.
Hipskin.
Aye.
Levin.
Present.
Healy.
Aye.
Conquest absent. Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner absent. Gudenkauf.
No.
Deuter.
No.
Seven ayes. 4 nays. 2 absent and 1 present. Does that add up like 11?
7 ayes, 4 nays, 1 present. According to our ordinance, the present will be recorded with the majority. That motion passes. On to reports and recommendations of appointed and elected officials. 8.1, Mayor Morley, that is me. Clerk Spencer, you already mentioned the Elmhurst College recycling extravaganza on the 12th. My other report is our Springfield drive down is tomorrow. City Manager Grabowski and I, along with Aldermans Dunn, York, and Wagner, will be lobbying our elected officials down in Springfield on a variety of important information as it relates to Elmhurst, including confidential employee definition, local pension reform, and protection of our local tax revenue, which always seems to be a hot topic down there. That's it for me. City Manager Grabowski.
Thank you. I have a number of items for the council tonight. First is an update on the Public Works Director recruitment. We went through a round of interviews after significant review of their qualifications, and unfortunately, we didn't find the right fit for Elmhurst from those interviews. So we reopened the recruitment on that. Just thought it was the right thing to do, and that is open through May 2nd, and then we will review those applicants at that time and move forward. Second, the Communications Director position. We have completed a first round of phone interviews for that, and we're evaluating those for a second round written exercise for those candidates that move forward in that process. 2 other things. Today we received some notification from IDOT that the governor announced $100 million for local transportation improvements across Illinois, and in that Elmhurst was named as receiving $188,000. It's kind of double counting. That's already been allocated to the city through some previous announcements from the governor's office, so I'm not exactly sure what they were trying to do today, but just so everybody knows, if you see that, we're already counting that $188,000 as in the budget for road improvements for the future. And then the last item is an update on snow and ice costs for the previous winter season that was requested at the last meeting. Since we switched to a calendar year budget, we've kind of broken it out in a couple different ways. The first is the 2013 budget, which we were on budget for. We budgeted $308,000. $500, and we spent $308,424. So that was for the end of 2013. In 2014, however, we have spent significantly more, as you can imagine. We have budgeted $727,480, and we have spent $942,995. So that is just over $215,000 over budget from where we hope to be. So what we've done in the past when we've seen situations like this, we have just looked to the end of the calendar, or end of the fiscal year, so that we can see what other expenses have come in under, to try to balance that. So that's our plan moving forward. Keep in mind that we have the end of the calendar year winter season to deal with as well.
Thank you, City Manager Grabowski. Any other reports or recommendations? Alderman Brand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to request, if I may tonight, get an update on when the referendum will be on the DP&Z agenda in regards to the Edison parking garage. My next statement is in regards to what was on the consent agenda this evening, a referral from Alderman Plumsky and Alderman Dunn, the concrete street referral. I believe it was 6.5. I look forward to discussing that further along with my previous referral for concrete streets. And the last thing, and I touched on it in earlier discussions, is my great concern over the A-frame signs that are, I would go as far as saying, littering the downtown area against our current code.
The referendum is actually going to finance, and I'll ask Chairman York. Do you have an idea when it's going to come before your committee?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm hoping that we can have it on the agenda for this coming week, but I do need to speak with Marilyn. I've asked her for a bunch of information related to that. I know this is going to be a well attended, thought out. We need to be prepared for some constructive debate on this. So in light of that, I asked Director Gaston for some information. She's provided it for me. I'm reviewing it to make sure everything I have. So my intention is to try and get it on the agenda as soon as possible.
Okay. Any other reports or recommendations? Any other business? Alderman Gutenkopf.
Well, this is sort of along the lines of the sandwich board signs, but it struck me as other business. We have a sign ordinance that, Mr. Mayor, I know you were involved in crafting, that restricts the size of political signs.
Yes.
And clearly that it wasn't enforced during the last political season, and I think looking forward to the next election in November, I certainly would like to see the city address this and step up to the enforcement of our size limit for political signs. As long as we're talking about illegal A-frame signs, I think we should look at illegal political signs as well.
Okay, I can tell you, Alderman Gutenkopf, every time I saw something larger than 6 square feet, I put in a call to City Hall. So.
And why didn't we take those signs down?
It's up to the campaign. We give the campaign a courtesy of usually a day or two to get them down.
Never happened.
To my knowledge, they did come down.
No, they didn't.
Okay. Any other business? Motion to adjourn? Alderman York, second by Alderman Hipskin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.